Are you currently operating a business that is currently failing? Or did you just buy a business that is currently underwater? I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide of exactly how to get that business from a negative to a positive based on my experience. And I'll revert to some of the experience on another business that I bought that was exactly in that same situation. Stay tuned. I'm going to exactly show you how. Hey guys, welcome to the show today. My name is JC. I am hoping you are having a very blessed day today. The good Lord upstairs gave me an opportunity to wake up today. Hopefully he did the same for you. And we are going to give the most out of today. And we are going to make sure that we do the things that we need to do in order to become the best version of ourselves today. Anyways, with that being said, today's video was probably going to be the very first video that we were going to quote unquote semi-script with some bullet points. The video today and what we're going to be talking about is going to be how to turn around a failing business if you currently have one, or if you've purchased a business that is currently at a negative cash flow, how to turn around that business into a positive cash flow. Now, when it comes to this particular video, even though we were going to script some of it, or at least give some sort of bullet point scripting, we decided, me and the producer behind the camera, Rich over there, we decided that this video, not so much over the other ones, but we felt like this one needed to be also unscripted, not because we're lazy, not because we didn't want to do that, not because we think that there is no benefit to doing that. But one of the things that was super important, when I watch other YouTube videos before we started this channel, and I watch all sorts of business content, oftentimes when I hear some of these people talk about, there's a very few of those YouTube's business people out there that, to be honest, I actually believe that they know how to do the thing that they're talking about. Oftentimes I get the feeling, just based on my 20 years of business experience, how they approach things or the things that they talk about, I often get the feelings that it's not only is it a scripted video, but they actually don't know how to do the thing that they're talking about, if that makes sense, right? So when it comes to a failing business, I thought it was uber important in this particular video for me to just really, again, come off the top with 20 years of business experience in operating successful businesses and being able to turn around unsuccessful businesses. And I thought that it was uber important for this particular video for me to give you the information as I see it with my experience right from the top, unscripted, so that you understand, hopefully, that you know that I know exactly what I'm talking about, because again, I've done it so many times, right? And I certainly don't claim to be the wealthiest or the smartest or the richest. All I am going to tell you is I've done relatively well for myself, and everything that I've spoken about on this channel up until now has all been unscripted. So just like the rest of them, this one is the exact same way, really based off of experience. Okay, great. So I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide, right? So this is usually going to be anywhere between 3 to 4 steps. And again, if you want me to do a longer video at a later time on how to take a business from a negative business to a positive cash flow business, and then how to maintain and level and grow from there, I'll be happy to do that video. That is certainly not only a longer video, but that process is a little bit different. This particular video, really what we're going to focus on more than anything else is how do we go from a negative business to a positive business as quickly as possible, right? So that's really what we're going to focus on. And then again, if we want a longer one later, I'll be happy to make that. Great. Some of my experiences, I'm going to revert back to an actual business that I bought that was actually in that exact same scenario. I bought the business, and we'll link the video somewhere on here, down at the top or at the bottom of that exact video on how I actually bought a business for zero money out of my pocket. Actually, not only did I buy it for zero, I actually bought it with zero out of pocket and was able to pocket some money out of that deal without using really any of my money out of my own pocket. So if you want to learn how to do that with a business, please go watch that video. But with that being said, I will revert to that particular business because that business falls under the category I was talking about. I bought the business zero out of pocket, but that business was failing even after I bought it and was producing a negative cash flow situation that I obviously had to fix as quick as possible, right? Step number 1. Hey, Jimmy, I am operating, or I bought a business and this business is failing, or it is in the negative, right? In other words, it is in the red and it is not printing what we would call in our business or my business black ink. In other words, you are losing money. Great. Step number 1, you have to know your numbers and you have to identify quickly. Here is the key word in the first step is you have to do it quickly. You have to identify where the bleed is coming from, and you're not going to be able to do that unless you know your numbers really, really well. Great. What does that process look like? I'll tell you the process that I used in this business that I bought. I went ahead and took the entire financials from the financial system that the business actually used over the last 12 months. Once I took the financial statements, or AKA the P&Ls, profit and loss statement, from that business, I flipped that directly into a Google Sheet. Why did I flip it into a Google Sheet instead of, hey, Jimmy, you already have the printed P&Ls, and it prints them in a PDF format, by the way. You already have the PDFs. Why did you need to flip all that data into a Google Sheet? Simple. I have created on my end, to make my life easier, an entire Google Sheet model where I drop in all of the financials or all of the P&Ls into my Google Sheet model. And in my Google Sheet model will automatically tell me all of the areas in the business that I need to pay attention to. It'll automatically color code certain cells and numbers, COGS, fixed variables, all sorts of different things, so that I don't have to second guess myself as to the things that I should be paying attention to. And again, at some point, if you guys want a copy of that Google Sheet or want to be able to have that model, I'll be happy to hand it over. Won't be behind a paywall. So if that's something that interests you, comment down below. Let me know if you need that, and I'll be happy to hand that out for free. Not a problem. So anyway, so I flip it into a Google Sheet, and the first thing you need to do is you need to identify the bleed. You need to identify where you are bleeding as quick as possible. My initial Google Sheet model really splits things up into these kind of segments, right? It records, obviously, sales, right? So credits. Where is my income coming from, right? So that's the first thing I want to know. Once I know where the income is coming from, it's then going to take whatever the debits are, aka the expenses, and those expenses usually in my model, or in my very quick model anyways, really get split into these particular kind of sub-segments, right? So I'm going to split those into COGS. What are COGS? Cost of goods sold. A COG is an expense that only happens when you are selling a product of some sort in that business. If that expense isn't attached to a product that you are selling, then that expense would not be a COG. That would either be in a fixed expense or a variable expense, depending on whether, again, the expense is fixed or variable. Now, the other two, as you can obviously tell, are going to be a fixed expense and your variable expenses. What is the difference between the two? Example, a fixed expense is going to be something like your base rent, for example. You know the rent, it's due every month. It's the same all year until, you have a rent percentage difference year over year, depending on your lease agreement. You would change it the following year, but that is a fixed expense that you know is coming. It is exactly the same. It's due on the same date. It's the exact same amount. That would be considered a fixed expense. Then you have your variables. What would a variable be? Well, your variable would be, for example, like your electricity, right? So if you have electricity on the building, that is a variable expense. Why is that? Though that bill is never the same. You don't get charged a flat monthly electric bill. You get charged on the amount of electricity that you use any given month. So that would be considered a variable expense, right? So again, just to recap, you have your assets, right? So you have your credits, aka your sales, top line, and then bottom line, you have all of your debits, expenses, as three different formats. So as three different segments. You have COGS, you have fixed expenses, and variable expenses. Very simple. Once you have all those numbers together, you essentially, plus or minuses, and then down at the bottom of the sheet, you can very easily know quickly where the business stands as far as either net or positive cash flow. In other words, aka operating income. Based on those credits and based on those debits, does the business generate positive cash flow? It's very simple. In other words, at the end of the month, after you put those numbers together, are you plus 1,000? Are you negative 2,000? In retrospect, based on the conversation we're having today, let's assume that obviously is a negative, because we're talking about how do we get a business from a red negative to a positive. So great. I'll take you back to the business that I purchased. That again, that we linked the video in this video somewhere below. That business, after I did exactly what I just explained on how to do, that business was generating a negative $2,300 $2,300 loss. In other words, it was operating at a negative $2,300 every single month. That is the amount of money that the business was losing every single month. Great. That brings me to step number 2. Now that you know what the bleed line is, aka now that you know how much money you are losing every month, and again, the important part about that exact first step is going to be speed. You don't want to take months to do this. You need to do this either the minute you think you're in trouble. I mean, you should have done it already, but the minute you think you're in trouble or the minute you buy that business that you know is not in a good place. You need to be able to know your numbers quickly, educate yourself on the numbers, find out where the bleed is coming from, and you need to do it fast. And when I mean fast, I mean you should have this thing done in a day or 2. That's how fast this thing should be. So once I knew that, and once I knew the business that I just purchased, again, zero out of pocket, but was losing $2,300, then you go into step number 2. What is step number 2? Well, unfortunately, this is the unpopular answer. And this is where a lot of entrepreneurs really struggle, especially in the beginning. Once you've been in business long enough, this unfortunately and fortunately at the same time gets a little bit easier. But really, in the beginning, as a young entrepreneur or as a new entrepreneur, this is one that a lot of entrepreneurs really struggle with, including myself, by the way, when I started my first business 20 years ago. Now that we know we're losing money, and now that we know where the loss is coming from, because you put everything on a Google Sheet or your own model or whatever you built out for yourself. Great. What's the next step? Simple. It's very difficult, if not impossible, for you to actually make educated decisions when you are bleeding $2,300 a month. Let me say that again. It is going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for you to actually make decisions for the business, knowing that that business is failing or losing $2,300 a month, period. And to be clear, I have resources. All my other businesses are profitable. So I have the capital to absorb that $2,300 loss if I really wanted to, but I certainly didn't buy a business to lose $2,300. I treat every one of my business as its own sole independent business. In other words, I don't take profit from one business and put it in another business, because then at that point, I'm not really a good businessman. And if we start to do that, that just leads to some very bad habits that we don't want to deal with. So I treated that business like a standalone business, and that business was losing $2,300. So great. The answer would be you have to get to net zero. Again, back to quickly. Speed matters here in step number 2. Step number 2, get back to base level. Get back to zero. Get back to even. Whatever you want to call it, aka what do you have to do to get that business from losing X amount of dollars? In my personal experience with my business, how do I find a way to get that business from losing $2,300 to breaking even and not making any money, but not losing $2,300 or as close to break even as possible? So again, back to, if you put everything on a spreadsheet and you know where your expenses are coming from, now you can start to highlight all of the things that you can essentially either cut, get rid of, or renegotiate, right? So you have to look at every expense that you have and how you need it? Is it a necessity? In other words, internet is a necessity. Can't cut that, but can you get a cheaper internet provider? Okay. Rent, unnecessary. Take a look at the current rate model for every other business in town, right? Are you getting overcharged? Did the old owner not do a good job of negotiating his lease rent? Okay. You can always go back to that owner. You can always go back to the landlord and try to renegotiate your lease or your rent factor. Don't ever think that you can. You can't. You are the new owner. You are more than welcome to make that phone call and try to renegotiate your per square footage or your lease base rent to try to shave some money off of your base rent factor or whatever your rent payment is on that particular location. You want to take a look at all your employees. Unfortunately, do you need all of them? Is this a business where you are going to operate? In other words, are you going to be one of the people that is going to be working at the business? If that is the case, and you are going to be there, do you need every employee that you have? Unfortunately, can you cut an employee or two since you are going to be there working the business? So can you save yourself some money on what we call comp in my businesses anyways? I call it comp, which is compensation for leads, managers, employees, and all the other people that work for you, right? So can you cut some money from comp, right? Can you take a look at any expense from any vendors that you currently either A, don't do business with, or B, things that are really, again, unnecessary. Let me give you an example. At my particular business that I bought, which if you know, it is that particular business was the postal shop store, kind of like a UPS store, but an independent. I took a look at every vendor that I had. I then bounced that against all of the products that we have sold within that profit and loss statement that I put together over the last year. Any product that I was not positive net cash flow in at the end of that 12 months, I called back every one of those vendors and I automatically canceled their services, period. There is no sense in me keeping those services if they have generated a net negative cash flow for the business over the last 12 months. And again, that could have been because the old operator didn't exactly know how to do that. But again, what are we trying to achieve here? What we're trying to achieve here quickly is to get to net zero. You want to get to even because it's hard for you to make a decision or operate a business when you are bleeding $2,300 every single month like clockwork. Somebody has to pay for that. And you're the owner. So guess what? It is coming out of your pocket, usually out of another business or out of your personal income, which is never a good thing. So great. That is how you get through step 2. You have to find out what that net negative loss is. You have to go through your financial statement, and then you have to start fixing, analyzing, and cutting, renegotiating, getting rid of anything that is unnecessary or that you know you no longer need, so you can try to shave off as much of that $2,300 as possible. In my particular scenario, what I ended up doing is once I did all of that, I ended up getting rid of an employee. Why is that? Because I had somebody that was already going to work for me that I had brought in on a special deal. So I got rid of an employee. I went ahead and renegotiated my lease rent on the building and saved, I think, like $350 a month, something like that. I went ahead and renegotiated all of my vendors. So every vendor that I was going to keep, I went back as the new owner. And I renegotiated all of the contracts and I renegotiated all of the fee structures and managed to save money on all of those. I renegotiated the fee structure on my credit card payment machine. So I went ahead and went back and said, hey, I found a better option and was able to save myself some credit card processing fees and was able to add almost another $400 to the bottom line by getting a good offer on a credit card processing company. And then my current credit card processing company went ahead and just gave me the discount in order to not lose my business. And then I went ahead and cut anything that wasn't needed. And by the time I did all of that, within a matter of like a week and a half to not even 2 weeks, actually, within about a week to a week and a half of me taking over that postal store, I went from a negative $2,300 to a negative, let's call it $200. So I managed to shave off $2,100 in expenses for the business within less than 2 weeks, which then put me in a position where I could more freely feel more comfortable operating the business, knowing that I wasn't going to have to come out $2,300 out of my pocket just to keep the business alive, because that's how much money I was losing when I took over. Great, Jimmy, I've done that. I analyzed my numbers. I know where the bleed is coming from. Number 2, I went ahead and got myself back to net zero, Jimmy. I went and got myself to net even, and now the business is either losing a little bit of money or losing no money at all, or maybe I did an amazing job and now I'm making a couple $100. Awesome. Step number 2. Great. What is step number 3? Okay, now, if that doesn't sound like a lot, guess what? Now the hard work starts, right? Like that should have been, quote unquote, the easy part, right? The obvious part is to be healthy. Get healthy as quick as possible. What is the third step? Great. The third step in this situation is going to be, now you need to take a look at every lever that you can pull in your business that can generate income, net profit for the business, not only as quick as possible. There's 2 rules here. You got to do it again. Speed. If you haven't guessed it by now, I've sped speed at 3 times. There's a reason for that. When you are operating a business that is losing money, you cannot afford to wait. You cannot afford to be slow. You cannot afford to overthink yourself into a 3-month process. You got to do it quickly. You got to cut the bleeding fast. Or if you don't do that, you're going to be in trouble rather quickly, unless you have massive capital. But the pushback there is, if you have massive capital, chances are you're a very good business operator, so you would do those things anyways, right? So great. I've already done that. Identified the bleed. Now I'm break even, Jimmy, or I'm back to net zero. Third step. what lever do you pull in order to generate income? And that comes with 2 rules. First rule, number 1, okay? What lever can you pull that takes absolutely zero money? Again, because now we're going to go back to there's no money. The business isn't generating any income. So how do you do that without putting more money into the business? So what lever can you pull in the business that requires zero income or zero cash flow from the business or from you personally? That would be the first rule. The second rule is do it quickly. Very simple, guys. Do it quickly. Here are the levers that you have available to you when you are operating a business that you can pull when it comes to generating income, aka sales. There are only a few levers that you can pull, especially when those levers have to do with unpaid kind of verticals. So you can't do Google paid ads, you can't do paid social media, you can't do video viralization unless you have a video team like we do, but let's just assume that is not the case. So what levers can you pull to generate more income that don't require any of those things? Lever number 1, and again, this is something that most entrepreneurs really struggle with, especially in the beginning. Okay, because they have this notion that when they do this thing that I'm going to tell you, that they're going to lose tons of business. And I am telling you, I've done it multiple times, and that just is never the case. Number 1, reprice and readjust all of your pricing. Let me give you an example. I took over the postal shop. The very first thing that I did is I took a look at what everybody in town was charging on all of their mailboxes, right? So independent or a personal mailbox where people get mail delivered, because again, we were a postal shop. Here's what I found out. On average, we were roughly between $7 to $10 cheaper than every other postal store in town. Great. If we're $7 to $10 cheaper, chances are we are underpriced. So what is the very first thing that I did? I typed up a really nice letter. I put it inside the mailbox of every current mailbox owner, letting them know that I am the new owner, that I took over, we love their business, all of the warm and fluffy stuff. And then along with that we had done research and found out that we are underpriced based on the current market. And again, we're in California, so everything's expensive here. And that unfortunately, in order to keep the same level of service and in order for us to essentially remain open as a business and be able to offer our products and services, that we were unfortunately going to have to adjust prices, not more. We were still going to be cheaper. However, we were going to have to make adjustments based on the current market conditions of everybody else. And as a side note, I even went a step above that. On the letter, I actually had the guts to put down every other postal store in my area, and I managed to find out what their prices were. And I actually gave my customer an entire pricing matrix of what everybody in town was charging. And I told them where the location of that postal store was. Why did I do that? Jimmy, why would you point them to the competing business? Well, a couple things. First things first, it provides trust. I was the new owner. They were not going to like that I was raising their prices. So what I needed to do is I needed to give them something in return. And what could I give them in return? If I was already raising their prices, there's very little that I can give them in return. So what I decided to give them in return is I decided to give them complete honesty, and I decided to be very forthcoming, very politely and nicely, and at least provide my own research just in case they wanted to cancel. They knew what they were going to get themselves into. So I gave them every price for every postal store because, again, although we adjusted our prices, we were still in line with everybody else in market or a couple bucks cheaper, but we managed to raise our prices on every mailbox by an average of $6 across the board. Well, guess what? We had 140 mailboxes, 142 people that were renting mailboxes at almost $6 per mailbox. Do the math. Again, back to every little bit counts. Oftentimes, and crazy part is, I put this letter in the mailbox. Great. What happened, Jimmy? What was your cancellation, right? You should have had tons of cancellations. Nope. Not one single person canceled on our business because of the change of the price. Why is that? Well, if they were going to cancel us, that means that they were going to open another mailbox. Well, if they opened up another mailbox, were they going to save money over what I was charging them? Nope. We were still cheaper. Not as cheap, but still cheaper. And then here's what I banked on. Do you know how difficult and how much of a pain in the you-know-what it is for you to change all of your mailing addresses for your credit cards, your bills, your medical bills, your bank statements? Do you know how much of a pain it is for you to go through the process of changing all of those things over into another address, all realistically to not save money, but actually still pay a little bit more money. So what I banked on is the fact that people were going to be logical enough to, yeah, maybe they might have not liked it, but they were going to be logical enough to say, there's still no reason for me to move. I totally get it. Great. In return, what did we provide? We provided top-notch service. The service at that business, at that mail shop that I bought, to be quite honest with you, before I bought it, wasn't very good. It just wasn't. So what we did is we employed kind of the Chick-fil-A method, right? When you walk into our postal store, you would swear that you are at the Ritz-Carlton of postal stores. That's the way we operate. You come in, everybody waves, everyone says hi, we're happy, we got music playing. One day you'll have Led Zeppelin, the other day you'll have Red Hot Chili Peppers. There's always something going on. It is an absolute rule of thumb that the minute the door swings, everybody says good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to that person that walks in, and we know almost everybody by name. So what did we provide in return is we provided unparalleled top-notch customer service for that difference in price point. Then again, we're still cheaper, but we made sure that everybody felt extra super special when they walked into the postal shop, right? As a kind of, return on that. Not only were they happy to pay the difference, but we are now the highest rated at that business. We're the highest rated postal store in the entire area on Google. We went from like 3.2 stars when I bought the shop. We are now almost 5 stars about 2 years later, and we are the highest rated postal shop in that store. And we get customers all the time that say, hey, I passed 3 postal stores to get here because you guys are almost 5-star rated, and everybody that rates you says that your guys' customer service is awesome. So again, turn the negative into a positive. So that's the first lever that you're going to pull, is you're going to take a look at all of your products or services. You're going to see what the market is dictating on those products and services. And if you are underpriced or you're overly competitive, you are going to adjust your prices across the board. I promise you, more often than not, your cancellation rate is going to be very little. So that is the first lever that you're going to pull that requires absolutely zero capital from you. Second lever you're going to pull. The second lever you're going to pull is, how do you increase the LTV of your customer? Okay. What does LTV stand for? Lifetime value. In other words, how do you take your current customer and how do you upsell them, or how do you sell them more products and services so that you can increase the lifetime value of that customer? So that's the second thing that we did. What did we do? We really kicked off 2 programs. We kicked off a referral program. So anybody that was renting a box from us, we put another letter in their mailbox and we offered a referral fee. We said, hey, we got this new referral program. If you refer anyone to our postal shop, we are going to save you 2 additional months of your yearly annual rate on your mailbox. That alone got us a massive kick in business. And again, cost us absolutely nothing other than time and the printing of the flyers, which is a whopping couple bucks. Okay. So that's the second lever that we pulled, is how do we increase the lifetime value of that customer? AKA, how do we sell more to the people that we already do business with, and we attach them to the people that they know that we didn't know, and then we offered them something in return in order for them to bring somebody in. So that is the second thing that we did. The third thing that we did is we took that exact same customer that was already a customer of the postal shop, and we offered them a 20% discount across the board for all products and services that were related with the postal store. In other words, if they ever needed to print something, whether it was flyers, papers, sheets, posters, stickers, shipping, anything that postal store box owner wanted to do at our place of business, because they were a postal box owner within our establishment, we automatically offered them like a VIP rewards card for 20% off all products and services. So then all of a sudden we started to get a bunch of people that were doing business with us that normally would have only used us to rent their post office box or their mailbox from us. So we had a massive influx of new business that said, man, I know I've had a box here forever, but I'm gonna be honest, I used to go to Staples, I used to go to Office Depot, I used to go to this other shop to go print this other stuff. Man, with the 20% discount, it's actually cheaper if I come here. And now we are increasing the lifetime value of that customer, again, with zero money out of pocket. And then what's the third thing that we did? Well, the third thing that we did is we activated an email marketing workflow and automation. So we started emailing everybody that was either a former box owner or had ever done business with us. And we started to tell them that we are the new postal shop owners, and we started offering them special discounts, special package discounts, special discounts on mailboxes, on printing materials, on printing apparel. So everything that you can imagine that we sell, we started to essentially market to those people via email, which is a very, very inexpensive way. I think we honestly were spending maybe $3 to $4 a month just for our email system that we use there to be able to do that. And then we created the artwork in Canva, which again cost absolutely nothing. So again, you have to find the levers that you can pull that take absolutely zero capital out of your pocket. In other words, you want to be able to pull that lever with as little money resource as possible. Great. Once we did that and we pulled those levers, we went back. And what is step number 4 now? Okay, so now that you've pulled the I know where I'm bleeding lever. Now that you've pulled the I'm going to get to net zero level, right? Like I'm going to get to net even. I'm not losing as much money. So now I can think clearly and make decisions. Once you've pulled the how do I increase revenue lever, specifically, how do I increase revenue without having to recapitalize the business or put in a bunch of money out of my pocket that I either don't have or I don't want to put. So once you've pushed and pulled all 3 of those levers, then what is the 4th lever? The 4th lever, or the 4th step in my process, was now that I've done all of that and now that I am maintaining my numbers, now I go back to my numbers and now I see where I stand, okay? Now I am reanalyzing my situation to see, now that I did all 3 of those steps, where did I land? Am I net positive? And by how much? Again, you have to know your numbers like the back of your hand. You should be able to recite your numbers right off the top of your head. Great. Here are my numbers, and here's where my postal shop ended up. I went from losing $2,300 when I first bought this particular business to net positive, let's call it about $800 within a matter of a month and a half. Let me repeat that again. I went from losing $2,300 to being net positive $800 a month in less than a month and a half. That's how fast I turned around the postal store. Great. How does that number play out, or how does it, how does it kind of get me and catapult me into the next kind of level of the business? Well, 2,300 plus 8, it's 3,100. So we literally had a $3,100 swing in that business in less than a month and a half. Great. What did I do with the $800 net profit? I'm fortunate enough to say, although $800 is not tons of money, it is a profit. Personally, I didn't need to pull that profit. So what did I do? We took that $800 in net profit, and now I applied a 4th a lever that did require capital. I went ahead and took that $800, I put it into Google Ads, and I started running a Google ad campaign, specifically local search ads and local service-based ads for the postal shop. And the minute I did that, my internet traffic and my traffic from my Google business profile has gone up, kid you not, like 300 or 400%. And then the rest is history. And then now I've been able to not only go from an $800 profit, I've been able to move the business. When I first bought it, was generating about $7,400 in total gross income. Sales. I went from $7,400. We are now generating upwards in the amount of $17,000 to $20,000 a month in actual gross receipt sales, minus, and the business is net profitable. But we managed to get out of that hole. And again, number 1 rule here, you have to do this quickly. If this is going to take you 3, 4, 5 months for you to execute, I am telling you right now, you are going to suffer immensely and you are not going to get the result that you want. Because again, when you are bleeding like that, it's kind of like, it's kind of like literally technically like you're bleeding, right? Like what happens when you cut yourself in a really bad area and you're bleeding? What is the very first thing that anyone will tell you that you have to do? Stop the bleeding. 100%. The number 1 thing you have to do is stop the bleeding. If you are still bleeding, you're going to pass out before you can get to the hospital. So you have to stop the bleeding. Once we stop the bleeding, the rest of it kind of came easy. Again, 1, 2, 3 step, boom, boom, boom. Make it quick, make it easy, make it efficient, make it fast, and then just execute on that plan as quickly as possible. Go back, 4th lever, reanalyze, and hopefully now you're in net positive. Chances are you probably are. Now you double down And now you start to pull some of the paid levers, so in order for you to hit that next level. So anyway, so hopefully that's been helpful to you. And again, I know we kind of not necessarily went all over the place, but I wanted to give you some real good feedback, not only on how you do it with any business, but really how it applied to a real life business that, again, I had just bought. Because again, like I said in the beginning of the video, it was important for us not to script this video so that you guys understand what I am talking about on how to turn around a failing business or a business that you are struggling with if you just bought it that is failing. I wanted you to know that it comes from experience, and I certainly didn't, pop it into ChatGPT and script it all, and I really haven't done the thing that I'm actually talking about. That is something that me and my producer talk about all the time that is super important to the content that we put out. So anyways, with that being said, I really appreciate your guys' time tonight. Again, stay blessed. And again, remember, God is your guide. He is not your ride. Be willing to do the things and take advantage of the opportunities that the big man upstairs gives you in order for you to become the best